I just want to follow up on this line of questioning, Professor Lee. When you say that it would be to the benefit of the United States, isn't Mr. Baldacci a citizen of the United States?
Entirely. I'm not saying that Mr. Baldacci does not benefit from the copyright. There is an
So isn't, but let's take a different author, Professor Viswanathan. She's a citizen of the United States.
Yes.
So I'm just struggling to understand when you say that it will benefit, that the mass theft of their works will benefit the United States ultimately, you're saying that the mass theft and potential impoverishment of American citizens ultimately redounds to the good of America?
Not at all, Senator.
I think you're being a little too imprecise, right? What you mean to say is it may benefit American corporations.
What's up, Patriots? Welcome back to America First. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a Senate hearing that exposes everything wrong with how our government prioritizes corporate interests over American citizens' rights. If you believe in putting Americans first, smash that like button and subscribe for more content that the mainstream media won't show you.
It may impoverish American citizens, but it will benefit American corporations.
Well, Senator, there is a balance to be struck, and the courts...
Well, indeed, but it's you are waving the wand, the magic wand of this will benefit the United States, so we're in an arms race with China. I'm just trying to drill down on your assertion. I think what you're really saying is that the enrichment of certain multinational corporations that are incidentally based in the United States, taking the works and personal property of American citizens, is a good thing. That's a little bit less clear to me.
Well, the way that I view the national interest, as stated by President Trump's executive order, is that there is a national priority in maintaining the United States' dominance and leadership globally in AI. And I would defer to the view of the AI czar, David Sachs, who said, if there is no pathway to fair use in AI training, we will lose the race with China.
Well, you think that we should allow an unelected AI czar to decide what the rights of American citizens are?
No, not at all. This is going through the courts. I would let the courts decide all of these disputes, and there are presently 44 lawsuits around the country. So this is not a time for Congress to intervene in terms of deciding these very difficult questions.
It just sounds strange to me to say that the United States as a nation is going to benefit from the mass violations of its citizens' rights. I thought what made us a nation was our common citizenship, the things that we agree on together, the rights that we hold in common. And your argument seems to be it's fine to violate those rights en masse if it redounds to the benefit of the nation. I think what you're really saying is to the benefit of certain people in the nation and their immediate interests. Let me ask you about something else you said, fair use.
Can I respond quickly?
Well, just a second. I have limited time here. Fair use, you said, is a flexible doctrine. It's an equitable doctrine. And these companies aren't exactly coming to this with clean hands, are they? They're coming to claiming fair use after they've stolen Mr. Baldacci's work. They didn't take it from the library. They didn't license it. They didn't buy it. They went to a pirated illegal site and took it. And now they're coming and claiming the cover of equity. That seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Is that how equitable law works?
That is the very question, the initial acquisition, whether that was justified as fair use. And the two judges disagreed on how to treat that initial acquisition from the shadow libraries. So I think it would be incorrect for us to assume that it is necessarily a violation, and the Supreme Court in Google versus Oracle had an opportunity to discuss or require considerations of bad faith in the fair use analysis, and it rejected that opportunity and even cited Judge LaValle's very influential fair use article saying that fair use is not limited to the well-behaved.
Okay.
Now,
you're making these. We appreciate you being here, and you're making these arguments very gamely. That's helpful, I think, to have this debate. But I just want to point out that there's a lot of hand waving going on here. Every time we get down to the nub of the question, can these giant corporations take the copyrighted work of individual citizens? We get distracted with, well, it's for the good of the country. maybe it's not so bad. We have an arms race on. There's an AI czar. I actually think I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's pretty simple. I think in America we have rights. Those rights are what protect us. These rights are being violated. And if we're going to succeed as a nation and uphold our principles as a nation, we better darn well enforce the individual rights on which the nation's founded. I mean, it's just a thought. Senator Welch.
I just watched a Senate hearing where Professor Lee is essentially arguing that it's okay for massive corporations to steal copyrighted works from American authors and creators because it supposedly benefits our national AI race with China. Let me break down what's really happening here and why every patriotic American should be outraged. First, let's get the facts straight. These AI companies didn't go to libraries or purchase licenses like law-abiding businesses should. They went to pirated websites and illegally downloaded copyrighted material from American authors. Then they had the audacity to claim fair use after committing what amounts to mass theft. This is exactly the kind of corporate cronyism that's destroying our country from within. Professor Lee keeps waving around President Trump's executive order about AI dominance. But here's what he's missing. True American strength doesn't come from abandoning our principles and stealing from our own citizens. It comes from upholding the rule of law and protecting individual property rights. The moment we start saying it's okay to violate Americans' rights for some perceived greater good, we've lost what makes America great in the first place. The senator in this hearing gets it exactly right when he points out that these aren't just abstract legal concepts. We're talking about real American citizens like Professor Viswanathan, who worked hard to create intellectual property, only to have it stolen by multinational corporations. These companies are making billions while impoverishing the very Americans whose work they're stealing. Now, Professor Lee tries to frame this as benefiting the United States. But let's be honest about what he really means. He's talking about benefiting Silicon Valley corporations that happen to be based in America. There's a massive difference between what's good for American citizens and what's good for corporate shareholders. A true America First approach would protect American workers and creators, not sacrifice them on the altar of corporate profits. The reference to AI advisor David Sachs, saying we'll lose the race with China, without fair use is particularly troubling. Since when do we let unelected bureaucrats decide what rights American citizens should have? This is exactly the kind of deep state thinking that puts government and corporate interests above the people. We don't need to become like China to compete with China. Here's what really bothers me about this whole discussion. The establishment keeps telling us we need to sacrifice our principles to win some imaginary race. But what good is winning if we lose our soul in the process? What makes America exceptional isn't just our technology or our military might. It's our commitment to individual rights and the rule of law. The senator makes a brilliant point about equity and clean hands. These companies didn't come to this situation honestly. They knowingly went to illegal pirate sites to steal copyrighted material. Now they want to hide behind legal doctrines meant to protect legitimate fair use. That's not how justice works in America, and it's certainly not how capitalism is supposed to work. Professor Lee's reference to the Google versus Oracle case is misleading. Just because the Supreme Court didn't explicitly require good faith considerations doesn't mean we should encourage bad faith actors. The whole point of intellectual property law is to incentivize creation and innovation by protecting creators' rights. When we allow mass theft, we're destroying the very foundation of American innovation. What we're seeing here is a perfect example of how the swamp operates. Corporate lobbyists and their academic allies create complex legal arguments to justify what any reasonable person would recognize as theft. They hide behind phrases like national interest and fair use, while systematically undermining the rights of individual Americans. The truth is, we don't need to steal from our own citizens to compete with China. America has always been most successful when we protected individual rights and free market principles. Our strength comes from empowering American entrepreneurs and creators, not from allowing corporations to plunder their work without compensation. This issue goes to the heart of what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a nation where individual rights are sacred and protected? Or do we want to be a place where those rights can be trampled whenever it's convenient for powerful interests? The answer should be obvious to anyone who truly believes in American values. The 44 lawsuits mentioned in this hearing represent thousands of American creators fighting for their rights. These aren't wealthy corporations with teams of lawyers. These are individual Americans who had their life's work stolen and are now forced to fight billion-dollar companies in court. That's not the America our founders envisioned. What's particularly frustrating is how this ties into the broader pattern of our government prioritizing foreign competition over domestic prosperity. Instead of asking how we can better support American creators and innovators, we're asking how we can make it easier for corporations to exploit them. That's backwards thinking that will ultimately weaken our position in any global competition. The senator's closing statement perfectly captures what's at stake here. America's strength doesn't come from abandoning our principles when it's convenient. It comes from consistently upholding the individual rights that make our nation exceptional. When we start making exceptions for powerful interests, we're on a dangerous path toward the kind of authoritarian capitalism we see in other countries. Here's what needs to happen. Congress needs to pass clear legislation protecting American creators' intellectual property rights. We need to hold these AI companies accountable for their theft and require them to properly license content like any other business. And we need to reject the false choice between protecting American rights and competing globally. The real America First position is to build our AI capabilities on a foundation of respect for individual rights and